Okay, now let's look at punches. So let's start in our square horse stance with hands in chamber. Now our punches, let me turn sideways so you can see this. It's very important on how you punch. Not just throwing a punch, but how you throw that punch. Now when you throw a punch, all strikes will come from a chamber position. Whether it's a heel palm, a vertical, or a hammer fist, we're all going to come from this chambered position. Unless we're going to use a continuation of a motion kind of strike. Now, the hand comes from chamber. Now from here we're going to slide the hand out. Now once the elbow leaves the rib cage, then we're going to roll it over and strike straight down the center line. Now when we strike down the center line, we want the wrist flat, and we want to strike with these two knuckles, not the in one. So you don't want your hand like this. You want your wrist just like that, and these two knuckles should be lined up with either the face, the solar plexus, or the groin. So from this position, come straight out and right down the center line. Okay, again, just so you can see how this is done. Once the elbow leaves the rib cage, you're done using those two big muscles of your pecs and your lats. Now we're going to go to the tricep, and then you roll over. If you roll over too soon, you're already using the tricep, which is much like a boxer, and you don't have quite as much power in that punch unless you really train that particular muscle for that strike. That, and it's a telegraphing move. As soon as the elbow leaves the body, your opponent's going to know you're going to throw a strike. So to hide the motion and get as much power behind it as you can, we're going to throw it from here. As soon as the elbow leaves the chamber, we roll over and strike. Now the way we practice this is we start with our left hand extended, pointed right at the center line, making sure it's nice and flat. Watch your targeting. Use your own body as your target points for height-wise. In other words, if your nose is here, that's where your punch should be, not way up here. So we start from here. The hand comes out as this one comes in, and we throw our punch. Same thing, we reverse it and throw the punch. Throw them slowly at first, and make sure you can feel the elbow leaving the rib cage. Watch the timing of those punches, it's very important. Then as you improve on these, you can throw two punches. 1, 2. Then again, 1, 2. Then you can add 3. 1, 2, 3. Or just go back to 1. You can use this on a bag, you can use this with a bob dummy, anything you want to practice with, or just do it in the air. Or if you have an opponent, you can use target pads. But main thing is at first, until you get this down, do it nice and slow. Feel that arm rub against your body as it rolls over. Then start changing targets. Go up, go down, go center, go back down, go back up. Any way you want to practice, start practicing different target zones. But every time you're making sure that you're throwing that punch straight out and down the center line. Now practice those punches, and we'll come on to more strikes. Okay, now let's look at strikes within the basics. The first strike we're going to use is probably the most common, and every system has these strikes. It's the reverse punch. Now as we learned, a straight punch just comes straight out of chamber from our horse stance. Now we're going to do what we call a reverse punch. A reverse punch comes off the backhand from a fighting stance. So as we're in our fighting stance, we're going to use Bob here so that you can see how this works. Your right hand is going to draw into chamber. As we pivot to a hard bow, the hand's going to come out. As the elbow leaves the chamber, we finish our hard bow and we strike the solar plexus, the face, or the groin with the two knuckles. So again, from our fighting stance, the hand draws. As we start to move, we start to pivot into a hard bow, so that at the moment of strike, we're in that hard bow stance, and our left hand is in check if that's the only punch you're going to throw. Now, if you're going to throw a second punch or a third punch or strike, this hand will go into chamber so that it can come out of chamber for another strike. Then this hand goes into chamber and so forth. Okay, again, the reverse punch from our fighting stance. Hand draws and strike. Now, several ways to practice this. One is just from the fighting stance, practicing like this. The other one is to add blocks to it. So we do like an inward block, reverse punch. upwards block reverse punch. Also practice stepping in and throwing your reverse punches. Now make sure that when you throw the punch, you're not too close that you jam yourself up. You should be, if you were to go through it, be able to go through about 1 inch to 2 inches into the body, no more than that. And then you strike. Okay, and that's a reverse punch. All right, the next strike we're going to look at is a vertical punch. Now, a vertical punch and a reverse punch are basically the same punch. The only difference is how you punch with your fist. So a reverse punch, you're going to punch with your 2 knuckles flat this way. Vertical, same thing, you just turn it over. So when you're doing your vertical punch, it's the same principle. Your hands are up, it comes into chamber. As you go to a hard bow, the elbow leaves the rib cage, the hand rolls over, and you strike your target. Same targeting, just like a regular punch. Straight on from the side or the back. So again, you can step back or forward, do your block or your check. Hand comes straight out as you go to hard bow, and you punch with your 2 knuckles. There again, it can go to the solar plexus, and it can go to the face, or it can go to the groin. Okay, last time. Now, also with this one, you can step forward, so it's good to practice stepping in with like an extended outward block, reverse or a vertical punch, or maybe in a stop hit scenario you can practice it. Also stepping back with your maybe an inward block or any of your other blocks. You can use a downward block, vertical punch. It's also good to practice with a body or a bag so that you can practice actually hitting something as hard as you can and see how much power you're generating and whether your stances are correct. So again, a vertical punch, you step forward or back into your fighting stance. From here, the elbow leaves the chamber as the hand goes to hard bow, and you throw your strike, hitting with your 2 knuckles. And that's a vertical punch. The next strike we're going to look at is the half fist. Now, the half fist is going to follow the same principles that we've been doing for the reverse punch, the heel palm, and the vertical punch. It does the same type of a motion. The only difference is the fist itself or the way we strike. Instead of using a full fist, we're going to use a half fist. Now, 9 out of 10 times, the half fist is going to go to the windpipe of the throat. Once in a blue moon, you might see it to the solar plexus of the groin, but almost every technique is going to take it right to the throat. That's pretty much what it's used for. Now, a half fist is just what it says. It's a half fist. Instead of having a full, you just tuck your fingers in, tuck your thumb in, and you strike the same way. Start from the chamber position, elbow leaves, roll over, half fist to the throat. Practice this like you do your other techniques, stepping forward into the strike, as well as stepping back into the strike. Also make sure you're throwing a good solid hard bow, that your foot is locked out, and that all the technique is properly done. And practice it slow but accurately. Let process and practice build up the speed for you. Again, half fist to the throat, into hard bow and back. You could go to the solar plexus, but like I said, most techniques is going to take it right to the throat. The next strike we're going to look at is a heel palm. Now, heel palm is just what it says. We're going to use the heel of our palm to strike with. Now, to do this, we want to make sure of 2 things. One, that the palm is leading the strike and not the fingers. Also, pull the fingers back and curl them so that they don't get jammed in the process of the strike. Also, heel palms are usually in an upward motion. They don't usually come straight in, even though you can. It's really hard on the wrist to do it that way. The same principles apply when throwing the strike as it does with all of our other strikes. You strike into a hard bow. So the process for this one is, once again, we start from our fighting stance. Hand is in chamber. It comes out of chamber as it leaves, the elbow leaves the rib cage. We strike up and into the chin, into the nose, into the solar plexus. Okay? Again, we can also step forward, do any block we wish or need to, depending on what we want to do, and then strike up, straight into the chin or the nose. You can also use the heel palm to come down on something. You can come down onto the nose to try to break the nose, or you can even strike downwards. You go through the sternum in this manner. And on rare occasions, you will see a heel palm this way, but it's really not something that's done very often because you have more of a chance of hurting your wrist. So most strikes are done upwards or in a downward action. So again, from our fighting stance, do any block you wish. Then from here, make sure your elbow leaves the rib cage before the hand rolls over, and then practice striking your different targets. You can also practice coming down on your targets in different ways with your heel palms, coming through targets. And that is a heel palm strike. Okay, the next technique we're going to look at is the spear hand. Now, a spear hand is you're pointing your fingers and then you bend them slightly. You don't want to do strike because then you can jam your fingers if you hit the sternum or some other bone that you're trying to avoid. You want to bend the fingers ever so slightly so that if you do hit a bone, it gives, and then you want to tuck everything. Now, this is also a linear motion, so you're going to go into a hard bow as you strike it. This is mainly designed to go to the sternum. Okay, you might see it occasionally into the throat, but mainly it's a sternum right between the bone there into the solar plexus to dump the air out of the lungs. So the hand comes in here and you bend the fingers and you strike. Okay, now if you're practicing on a bob or a bag, be very careful. It's easy to jam the fingers, especially if you're not used to the motion. That's why you see a lot of artists striking rice or beans. It's to get used to that impact of that strike. So when you're doing this, start off slow until you get used to the motion and the way it feels and making sure you're doing it right and striking correctly. Then as you get better, you can speed it up and strike even harder. The main thing on the spear hand is to cup the fingers slightly, put them all together, bend them, just like that. You get them bent, and then just as all the other ones, they come straight from chamber into a hard bow. Okay. Main thing is avoid bones. This is not designed to go to a bone. This is designed to go to soft tissue. So you want to aim right for those solar plexus. Just practicing over and over again. Put a target on your bag or on your bob so that you know exactly where the strike can go. And there again, be very careful when doing it because it'll be easy to jam those fingers up. And that is a spear hand strike. The next punch we're going to look at is an inverted punch. Now the inverted punch is when you're in too tight. In other words, I can't throw my reverse punch because I'm in too tight. It won't let me complete it and lock it out. So an inverted punch basically comes from the same position and it's similar to an uppercut, but the elbow doesn't leave the body. You're going to strike straight up into the solar plexus. Okay, using your hips, you're going into a soft bow because it's a circular action. Because it's circular, you drive up, like that. So an inverted punch comes from chamber, drives straight up into the body. Okay, we're going to use our soft bow and we're going to drive our hips in an upward action. So we step in and say like block on Kenpo shield, and we do an inverted punch. It drives straight up. Using our body to drive, strike up. Okay, the next strike we're going to look at is your back fist. There's three back fists. You have a basic standard back fist, you have a rollover back fist, and then you have a spinning back fist. We're mainly going to look at your standard back fist, and I'll introduce you to the rollover and what a spinning back fist is. Now, the back fist, usually you're going to be in a fighting stance when you throw it. For example, in Chinese sword, you step in with an inward block, and then you throw your back fist. Now, a back fist is you basically use the back of your hand, your knuckles here, and you flip the wrist into the opponent's jaw or a temple. Now, a back fist can also be used to strike through the kidneys and even through rib cages. But it's usually for the kidneys or the side of the face is where you're going to see it the most. Now, from a fighting stance, you're going to be slightly out of range of the strike to begin with. You want to lean into it ever so slightly and then flip that wrist. Just flip it. Okay? Don't try to stiff arm the technique like that. Just in and out. Just hit it and get out. And this way you can go into your next strikes that you want. Okay? So just from here, just point the wrist and you flip it real quick. Just a real quick strike. Now, rollover back fist is the same thing, except we come over the top. So, for example, if your opponent has his hands out, you can smother the hands and strike downward on your opponent. This is a rollover back fist. This is a straight back fist. We very rarely use a rollover in a technique. Usually a rollover is your fighting or your setups. We use more of the standard back fist, which there again, point the wrist and then strike into the temple or the jaw. Now, a spinning back fist is basically what it says. You're going to spin. There's several ways to do it, but from your fighting stance, you just step back and spin into it as you unwind. So if you're here and your opponent starts to back up on you just a bit, you can step in and strike them. A lot of times we use it to finish off a technique. We'll get the opponent stepping backwards, we'll come in and keep striking, and then we do our final back fist strike to finish them off. So, a standard back fist from a fighting stance, point the wrist and flip it. Just flick that wrist. Okay, then you have a rollover back fist, which comes over the top as we check. Just like it says, it rolls over. You see a lot in katas and so forth. And then you have your spinning back fist where you step in and spin. And that's how you do a back fist. Okay, the next strike we're going to look at is the hammer fist. The hammer fist uses the side of the fist here. And what we usually do is we strike into the temple or through the nose or even into the rib cage or the kidneys there again. Now, a common way to see this is like in a stop hit motion, or what we call a stop hit, where you come in and just hammer fist your opponent's temple. Like in White Tiger Kenpo, stop hit, D. Then you also have it where it's seen in using kidney strikes, such as in crashing elbows, like in Tracy's Kenpo and other styles of Kenpos. You'll see a hammer fist used in this manner. Main thing is you want to use this part of the hand, and whether you're striking to the side this way or striking through. Now, this is a circular motion, and as you can see, you're using a crescent kind of a motion here. So we're going to use a power pattern of a soft bow. Unlike our other strikes, which are all been linear, where we use a hard bow, this one we're actually going to use a soft bow. So, for example, as we step in to strike the temple here, we go to soft bow to horse. So when you're practicing this, make sure you're practicing stepping into soft bow and striking into horse. Now, the other way, if you're practicing on your bag or your bob here with a strike through hammer fist, then you're going to be in soft bow to soft bow as we strike through to develop that power, and it'll be more of a swinging hammer fist. So we have a hammer fist where you step in and strike the temple. Then the other common way is to step in, block, and strike through the kidneys. The next strike we're going to look at is the sword hand strike. This is used for Chinese swords, 7 swords, 5 swords, any technique that has the word sword in it. This strike is probably in there somewhere. Now, a sword hand is using the back side of the hand, this part right here. Now, you want to tighten that muscle up so the muscles cover those bones. And the sword hand comes in usually through the collarbone, even though it could be used to it inverted to the ribs. But most of the time, you're going to see it like in Chinese sword or in 7 swords or 5 swords. You're going to see it strike the collarbone. You're going to come in and chop straight down on that collarbone and follow through. So make sure you're, one, just like the spear hand, your fingers are cupped. They're nice and tight. When you do it, you'll notice that when your hand's flabby, the bone's real easy to see and feel. But once you cup your hand and tighten it up, that muscle wraps around and starts protecting that bone just a little bit. And that's what you want. And then you want to be able to come in just like the line of a gi, and you strike straight down. Usually it's a figure 8 motion or some kind of a continuous action that allows you to continuously build up momentum and power. But a sword hand is striking from here to here or here. It's this part of your hand. You're striking with this part of your hand. It's some type of a sword hand. The last strike we're going to look at is a ridge hand. Now the ridge hand uses the other side of the hand. Now the sword hand uses this side. The ridge hand is going to use the thumb side. Now a ridge hand is basically striking with this part of the bone right here. The Japanese call it a gakun, into the temple or into the ribs. 9 out of 10 times though, it's right here to the temple. Now when you throw one, you see a lot of people, they throw them way out here in these wild roundhouse style swings. That's not a proper ridge hand. One, because it can be blocked very easily. All your opponent has to do is bring his hands up and you can see it coming a mile away. What you want to do is, from your hands up here, let's say you're in a fighting position, you're going to drop the hand down by your side. And then you're going to bring it straight up their center line and roll it over at the last second. And use your body weight to strike with at that very last moment you rotate it over. What you don't want to do is do this. You might as well throw in a haymaker or a telegraphed, here I come. Keep it out of the line of sight. As you can see, it makes it harder for them to see the ridge hand coming if it's straight up the center. It's kind of like a wing chop. We don't come way out here, we come straight up the middle and hide it. Same thing, this comes straight up. At the last second, you roll your body over into a semi-soft bow, throwing that weight into it. Making sure you're hitting with this part of the hand. Now, if you're not used to striking with your hands, you might practice both with and without gloves so that you get used to it. That pain, that sting that comes with striking an actual person or object. Now, there again, the ridge hand from here comes straight up and rolls over as you rotate your body. You want the bone or the knuckle right here, this first knuckle, right into the temple of the opponent's side of face. Make sure the hand's nice and tight, the thumb is tucked underneath and out of the way. Okay, we don't want it next to it, we want the thumb literally dropped out of the way. Okay, and that is a ridge hand. In this section, we're going to look at the different elbow strikes. We have horizontal elbows, vertical elbows, and then downward elbow strikes. Now, an elbow is basically you're striking with the elbow. Now, whether it's a vertical or horizontal tells you the direction the elbow is going to go. Now, horizontal obviously is going from left to right. So you're going to strike this way. Now, the elbow should be right at your rib cage, and it just rolls over. It's not up here, way up here by your shoulder. It should stay, the hand should stay right here in your midsection where you're right above your belt. Okay? If you put your belt on correctly and put it in straight, this way, see how my hand, as I go to roll over to strike, my hand stays right here above my belt. I see a lot of students make this big mistake of bringing this hand way up here. Well, the problem is your target's way down here. We're striking the ribs and the kidneys. We're not striking the face with a horizontal elbow unless we need them or brought them down. We keep things level. So you should be striking straight like this. That elbow should not be level with your shoulder. You come in this way or you strike this way. That's a horizontal elbow strike. Then you have vertical, which means you're going to go up and down. Usually this is a chin strike. You struck the guy in the groin or done something that brought his head forward, and now we're going to strike the chin with our elbow. We're going to come up into a soft bow. Now, since these are all circular motions, elbow strikes will always be done into a soft bow motion or stance. So here, soft bow, soft bow. The third elbow strike we have is a downward elbow strike. Like tackle technique, you come in and you strike downwards on top of your opponent. Downward elbow strike should have the hands straight up, and you drop your body weight as the elbow strikes straight down. Okay, so it would come up and down, just like this, up and down. So horizontal elbow strikes, these can go through the ribs, the kidneys, anywhere along this section of the body. Vertical elbow strikes, you either go to the sternum or to the chin or even to the groin, depending on what position you're in, your height compared to theirs, and any number of factors. Then you have the downward elbow strike, which strikes down. Remember, on all three of these, though, soft bows. You should be horse to soft bow or soft bow to soft bow. So soft bow to soft bow or horse to soft bow. But you've got to have those power patterns in, or you won't get the results that you're looking for. So horizontal elbow strike, vertical elbow strike, and then a downward elbow strike to the opponent's back. Those are the three elbow strikes that you'll see throughout the Kenpo system.